Hey everybody, it's Lawrence, and I had a question today from one of my students that I thought would be good to answer for you as well. Here was the question. The question is basically a question about game two. And the idea that of game two is that there's a triumph of this over that. There's always the struggle of this over that, and we hope that one triumphs over the other. In other words, the good in this structure of mythology, in this structure of the game, that good must triumph over evil, for example. So the question is, what about bad people? Meaning, do you ever feel or ever have an obligation to stop bad that goes on, be it genocide or famine or whatever? And how do we deal with this without getting stuck in a mythology? So the answer to this question is really two parts. Number one is to understand that game one is a common game that people go to while trying to sort this out. So game one basically is the idea that everything happens for a reason. It's all good. That life the way it is has to be taken, the good, the bad, the ugly. You just have to take it all and you have to say yes to it all. That would be a game one structure. Game two, so this is a typical Buddhist structure, or it's kind of a mindfulness structure. It's a very common mythology that we have. It's a common game we play, and that's basically that game. Yes, I will. It all happens for a greater purpose, and you just don't see that purpose because you're a puny human. So that's the idea of game one. Game two, the struggle of this over that, good over evil, right over wrong. These two games that's basically the game that Planet Earth plays. And so when one is asking that question, you're really kind of trying to dance between game one and game two, that, oh, well, it must happen for a reason, or, these are bad people and we should do something about it. So how to deal with this without getting stuck in a mythology is to begin to think about the facts. The facts are that if there's a person who's coming in who's, for example, maybe let's keep it really simple. Like maybe you have somebody in your life who morally you feel some obligation, or you feel like you're going to help them or love them, or, and they just keep walking all over you, then you have to set a boundary. You have an obligation to take care of yourself and to set a boundary and to say no, like that behavior is not okay. There's a lot of spiritual games that we play that we are basically a way to allow people basically allow us to tolerate intolerable behavior. We put up with things we have no business putting up with because we have some story like it's all happening for a reason, or, well, I must transcend my anger, or, and this is all like what it's really about is just seeing clearly. Wow, this person is treating me like crap, or oh, I don't, this person is insane and they're trying to do insane things, and we set boundaries around that. And culture is filled with those kinds of boundaries. Boundaries about, just stopping crazy people from doing crazy things. Because if you are entrenched in one of these mythologies, one of these games, game one, game two, or game three, some of those games justify really shitty behavior as a means to an end. And as we move into game five is really a game about the way it is. And that's a much bigger game, because that asks the question of, like, how do you want to be treated and how are you treating other people? It asks us to play in a reality game where we're seeing clearly, not through our mythologies. And if we see clearly, sometimes there are just shitty people in the world, and there is no justification for their behavior. And some of those shitty people, some of them may need to be stopped in some way from doing what they're doing, whether it's protecting little animals or, whatever the thing is, but thinking that there's like an absolute standard in the universe is where we get it wrong, that there's like this absolute truth. So we want to move from this idea of absolute truth. And of course, some of you are going to hear this and be like, oh my God, but what about this and what about that? And, like I said, game 1 and game 2 is the main game that we play in. The idea here is to step into reality, and reality has a different set of rules, because you do things not because there's an invisible man dominating you and going to punish you, but you do things because why wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you treat people well? Unless you believe some crazy mythology, like that people are at their core evil, or, whatever. There are just so many things. But, like, that people are evil and they need to be beaten and punished into being good. And in fact, I heard a woman yesterday, and she said, well, here's my theory of it all. People are essentially bad. That's Catholicism and Christianity. And then they sort of at best get brought to neutral. And they get brought to neutral by being beaten and taught and harshly punished. And then that brings them to neutral, but they never really make it into good. And so that is a classic game 2 structure. But it says the same thing. It's basically the idea that there's, inherently something wrong with you. And of course, if that's your perspective, it will make you do weird things and think weird things and treat people poorly, because you're like, well, I'm bad and evil anyway, so why should I try? In essence, in this sense, religion is a form of learned helplessness, where we learn to be helpless and hopeless because there's no hope anyway. So then our hope is like, just wait till the end of the game and then you get to go into the pearly gates of heaven. So in that sense, people can do some really despicable things. In fact, deeply religious people do despicable things all the time. When we step into reality, you just start to understand that that's part of what we're dealing with. There's some really crazy people out there doing crazy things. And you have an obligation to yourself, at the very least, to set boundaries and to keep your tribe, the people who you care about, the people who listen to this, my tribe who listens to this material and is trying to negotiate through life. I will, of course, always be wanting to help you see clearly so you can live your life more in the reality of reality. Until the next time, this is Lawrence. Thanks for listening today, and I'll see you in the next video.